question on the border wall. The border wall, the money was appropriated for the border wall. I tried to get them to reappropriate it, to redirect that money. They didn't. They wouldn't. In the meantime, there's nothing under the law other than they have to use money for what was appropriated. I can't stop that.
Do you believe the border wall works?
No.
Well, that's President Joe Biden yesterday saying that the border wall doesn't work despite his administration moving forward with the border wall. He got several miles that are planned, and, the questions of hypocrisy seem to be mounting just as high as that border wall because the previous statements by the administration and others saying that, essentially equivocating, saying that the border is secure, there's no need for a wall, saying that it's immoral. You had Nancy Pelosi saying that not too long ago, and a whole bunch of other statements about a proposed border wall that Republicans have been pushing for to close the border. But we've seen now more than 2.8 million people cross the border into the United States just in the past fiscal year, and it's been escalating every year. I think in 2020 there were 600,000 that crossed, that had encounters with Border Patrol. So you go from like 650,000 or so to more than 2.8 million in the span of several years per year, stacking up. You can see just how much of a issue this has become. So it was announced through federal rules and even statements from the Department of Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas that they have to do this. It's as the Democrats said this week, letters to the president, including one from Governor J.B. Pritzker. It's untenable, it's uncoordinated, it's overwhelming, and that seems to have provided enough pressure to not just Pritzker, but others from across the country, other Democrats that are getting inundated with these new non-citizen arrivals. And you've got the White House now seeming to say, okay, we've got to fix this. But are they saying that? This is what's really fascinating here. Because it's not just them seeming to reverse completely to spend tax dollars on a border wall after trying to sell border wall components. If you remember that story from not long ago, after criticizing Border Patrol for and alleging that they were whipping migrants crossing the border, if you remember that whole debacle. So is this a complete reversal, or is it kind of they're speaking out of both sides of their mouth? We'll definitely let you be the judge of that, and you can call in at 217-629-7970. But Governor J.B. Pritzker was asked about the border wall yesterday at an unrelated event in Chicago. He said essentially that the border wall that's being built now by the Biden administration is really a message to Republicans. It's time to come to the table to talk about comprehensive immigration reform. Here's the governor being asked about that yesterday.
Tell us about where your thoughts are on the wall and how Biden's decision to go back and build this wall that originally he had not been in favor of.
Well, you're focusing on a wall, but this is really more a comprehensive discussion about border security, and he's been in favor from the very beginning and for a long time in his career of border security, but also having significant immigration in this country. You've seen that, the projections that actually without immigration that we would have a declining population in the United States, which, by the way, would also lead to a declining economy in the United States. So
supports him now saying he is going forward.
Well, again, you're focusing on one aspect, which I understand, but I just want you to understand also that it's not just a wall that provides border security. There are lots of other aspects to it. And so making sure that we're enhancing all of those while also working for comprehensive immigration reform, because he's not doing this in isolation. He's also telling Republicans that if you want to come to the table, now is the time. We're willing to do this if you're willing to do that.
So again, Governor J.B. Pritzker says that Biden moving forward with building the border wall is sending a message to Republicans, hey, come to the table now. We're building this border wall. We're closing the border, despite us saying that the border wasn't open, despite us intimating that a border wall is racist or immoral. Despite all of that, hey, look, we're building the wall. Is this a turnaround, a 180? We'll hear, of course, what the White House press secretary had to say, but we'll revisit what President Joe Biden himself had to say, that the border wall does not work, he claims. 217-629-7970. We'll take your calls as they come in. Good morning. You're on WMAY.
Good morning.
Hey.
You know, they just realize that it's such a mounting problem that there's no way they're going to win any elections if they don't do something about it. But, you know, everyone is subject to doing what's right and what's wrong. And greed is a part of this thing. With all the millions of dollars transferred and these trafficking cases and things along those lines, it's pretty clear to me that, you know, they're making money off this, and it's becoming such a mounting problem that they can't ignore it any further. But I said years ago, you can only let so many people on a ship before it sinks. And, you know, like 5 years back, I was having to pay my Obamacare fine for not having insurance, and you had somebody come over here illegally, and they get free medical. It just doesn't make a lick of sense.
Yeah, and I think you'll definitely hear more about the political winds changing. We're going to have a pollster on a little bit later on after 7:30 to talk about that in more detail. So I encourage you to stay tuned because we've got a lot more to get to on this. But of course, you know, Governor J.B. Pritzker saying that, hey, President Biden building the border wall, you know, it's just part of his overall border security strategy and comprehensive immigration reform. And, you know, it's a message to Republicans saying, hey, look, we're building this wall. That's what we're willing to do. What are you willing to do? Well, again, here's President Joe Biden seeming to kind of contradict that whole notion from yesterday at the White House.
I'll answer one question on the border wall. The border wall, the money was appropriated for the border wall. I tried to get them to reappropriate, to redirect that money. They didn't. They wouldn't. And in the meantime, there's nothing under the law other than they have to use the money for what it was appropriated. I can't stop that.
Do you believe the border wall works?
No.
So we'll hear what the White House had to say. Karine Jean-Pierre, the press secretary, she was asked about, well, isn't this like a heaping pile of hypocrisy? So stay tuned. We'll get to that next here on WMAY. It is Springfield's Morning News. I'm Greg Bishop on 92.7 WMAY, Springfield's News and Talk. Follow me anywhere. Just search Bishop on air, and we can connect that way. All right? So make it happen. All right, so we heard about the border wall being built. You heard about the governor's response saying it's a message to Republicans that Democrats are doing this. What are Republicans willing to do on, quote, comprehensive immigration reform? You heard President Joe Biden say the border wall doesn't work, even though his administration is moving forward building one. And he claims it's because, well, it's triggered in the law. We have to do this. But you also got these headlines, U.S. resuming deportation flights of Venezuelans. The Biden administration, according to the Associated Press, will resume deporting Venezuelan migrants, the largest single group encountered at the U.S. border, back to their economically troubled country as their arrivals continue to grow. So you've got that playing out. But with what seems to be some kind of hypocrisy here, Karine Jean-Pierre, the White House press secretary, was just blasted with questions about all of this yesterday. So bear with me. It's interesting to hear her kind of dance around this issue.
Sorry, what specific law would the administration be breaking if funds appropriated for the border wall are not used, especially because the funds go unused all the time? I mean, why not let it go unused this time?
Well, look, I'm not going to speak to the law. I would have to refer you to Department of Justice. I'm not a lawyer, but what I can tell you is that this is a law that we are complying with. We have asked Congress multiple times to reappropriate this. This is not the way that we believe is going to be effective here. We believe in modernizing the system, not actually building a wall. The president said himself he does not think this is effective, and so we're complying by law. And we believe that in the rule of law here, and we're moving forward and getting that, in following the law.
Border walls ineffective. Why is the Homeland Security Secretary saying that it's necessary to prevent unlawful entries into the United States?
I have not seen that full statement. I know. I hear you. I'm just saying I have not seen his full statement on that. What I can speak to is for the president. The president's been very clear that he doesn't believe it's effective. He answered that question of your colleague. That's what I can speak to. That's what we're going to talk about. And we've actually said there are smarter ways and more effective ways in dealing with this. And there are. And so the president said himself, he asked Congress to reappropriate this funds for something that is more effective, for ways to do this in a smarter way as it relates to border security measures. They refused. This was announced back in June, and now we're moving forward.
And he said in 2020 as a candidate, so after this law was passed in 2019, that there will not be another foot of wall constructed in my administration. How can you say that he's not breaking that promise?
Well, what I can say is that there's a law that the DHS is complying with. We believe in the rule of law, and that's what we're moving forward with. This was decided, as you just said, in 2019. I believe there was a different president in 2019, right? That was a Republican president who actually pushed this forward. The Republican leadership pushed this forward. And so now we're complying by the law. Let's not forget, this was 6 months ago. This was out there 6 months ago. I know you guys are asking me about this now, but this was actually not new, and this was done 6 months ago.
Just to be clear about this, the president earlier today said that he was asked, does the border wall work? He said no. But in this statement that was posted within the last 24 hours, the Department of Homeland Security Secretary says there is presently an acute and immediate need to construct physical barriers and roads in the vicinity of the border of the United States in order to prevent unlawful entries into the United States. So who's right? The statement from the DHS Secretary overnight or the President's comments today saying they don't work?
So a couple of things. Yes, it showed up on the register today, but the announcement, this is not new. This is from 6 months ago.
Well, it is new because the waiving of the laws actually didn't happen.
But this is something that was out back, that the DHS was put out back in 6 months ago. So, and now they announced.
Did they waive the laws 6 months ago?
Well, what I'm saying is DHS announced this back in June that the agency would do so. They actually said that they would do that back in
They moved forward with it today, but the initial announcement was 6 months ago by waiving the laws. So that's what's new today. Understood. So
Yes.
the statement when he
Just wanna
says
make sure we're
presently
clear on
was
that.
filed. So when he said there is presently, are you saying when he says there is presently, he was referring to 6 months ago or referring to the date of which it was filed?
What I can
10/4?
tell you is DHS announced this back in June, that they were going to move forward with this. That's what I can share with you. That's what I know is to be true and is to be fact. Look, I can speak for the president. The president said he was asked directly, he doesn't believe a border wall is effective.
Does he have a disagreement with his Department of Homeland Security Secretary?
What I can tell you is what the president, I want to tell you what the president said and what your colleague asked him. He said, no, he doesn't believe that the border wall is
because he's
effective.
speaking in direct contradiction to what his own
I know,
Homeland
I hear
Security
you.
Secretary
I hear you.
says.
I'm speaking for the president. I'm saying that he has said that he does not believe a border wall is effective. That's what he was asked. He has said that for some time now, and it still remains to be the case. He asked, right? He asked Congress multiple times. His team has asked Congress to reappropriate the funds. They refused to do that. We're going to comply by law.
You asked the president on our behalf then, in the absence of our ability to do that, whether he disagrees with the statement that there is presently an acute and immediate need to construct
I'm
physical
happy to take
barriers.
that back. I'm happy to take that back. Go
Happy
ahead.
to take that back to the president and see if he wants to clarify his comments. All right, you've been waiting. I appreciate it. I'm going to have to cut you off, though. You got 30 seconds. Good morning.
Hello?
You're on the air. Go ahead. You got 20 seconds.
Neither side wants to do anything about these illegal aliens. They want cheap labor for the Republicans, and they want votes for the Democrats. They're not going to do anything. You can listen to these people bluster back and forth all you want. You go down to Texas where they have that wall, it works. I've talked to people down there.
Well, and they're building it. Even Texas Governor Greg Abbott sending out photos showing that, indeed, they are building that wall. All right, stay tuned. We got more to get to on